to 475 degrees. It's very important to preheat your oven and to wait until it has come to proper temperature. You'll know that the oven has reached temperature when the light goes out, or on some ovens it will beep to let you know. If you don't wait until the oven reaches temperature, it can burn the food. The exception to this is if you're using a convection oven on convection bake. That circulates air all around the food, so you can put food in before it comes up to temperature. But in a standard bake, you always want to preheat your oven. I'd just like to introduce us now. I'm Meredith, and I'm the dietitian in the Chronic Kidney Care Clinic. And I have Kiana, who will be helping me with the cooking today. And I also have Alicia, who's running the tech in the background. So she's taking care of the Zoom and all of your questions, and also doing the recording. So I do hope that all of you will participate with us today, and I hope that I've got some kids out there helping participate with their parents. If you do not want to participate today, we will be sending out a YouTube link following the session early to mid next week, and you will have an opportunity to view the session again at your leisure and participate at that point if you're more comfortable with that. Just some housekeeping things. Please keep yourself on mute. You can turn your video on or off. That's completely up to you. And if you do have a question, you can either take yourself off mute and say the question out loud, or if you would prefer, you can put the question in the chat and Alicia can read the question out. Good? All good? Awesome. So before we start any cooking, the first thing we want to do is we want to wash our hands, and we want to wash our surfaces in our kitchen. We do a lot of things in our kitchen. Often if you have an island, everything goes on that island, from school bags, dirty bags, things that you're bringing into the house. So it is a good idea just to make sure that our hands and our surfaces are nice and clean. We also want to wash our hands throughout cooking whenever we've touched things and we might have gotten our hands contaminated. So really good hand hygiene is important, as well as keeping all of our surfaces clean. So I'd like everybody just to take a second, go to your sink, wash your hands with soap and water. Also, if you have a sponge or a cloth, you can use a multi-surface kitchen spray. You can also put a little bit of bleach into a bottle with water. If you're using a bottle that was used for something else, please make sure to write on the bottle with a marker that it does contain bleach. You can also use, some Mr. Clean. You can use the Lysol wipes, whatever you have. It is just a good idea to give your surfaces a nice wipe. Also, I'd like to say, if I'm going too fast, or if anyone is having trouble keeping up, please speak up or put it in the chat, and I can always slow down. Or if you need me to repeat a step, that's not a problem. Just please let us know. It's also a good idea to wipe down your taps. We touch the taps all the time, and sometimes our hands aren't that clean. So you can just spray your cloth, give your tap a bit of a wipe, as well as your faucet. Okay, now that we have a nice clean surface and nice clean hands, let's get to the fun. Today we're going to be making a kidney-friendly pizza and a salad with homemade dressing, as well as some cinnamon buns from the leftover pizza dough, which will be a nice treat. They're also a great item to put into your child's lunch. Why make homemade pizza? Well, one, it's super fun, and it's something that you can actually do with the whole family. It's a really great way to get your kids involved in cooking. It's an activity that you could do on a Friday or Saturday night, make your own pizza. The other reason is that pizza is a really popular kid food. Who doesn't love pizza? But pizza that you're buying either pre-made in a store or from a pizzeria can be very, very high in salt or sodium. It also can be high in potassium because of the tomato sauce. And depending on what toppings you're using, it could also be high in added phosphorus. So today I'm going to show you how to make your own pizza dough that will have no sodium and no phosphorus, how to make a roasted red pepper sauce to use in place of tomato sauce that is much, much lower in potassium, as well as how to dress your pizza to make it kidney friendly. The first thing that we're going to start with is our red pepper puree. That's going to take the longest to bake in the oven, so we do need to make sure that we have enough time for it to bake. So Kiana, do you want to grab our red peppers? If you want to get your red peppers, we will start preparing the red peppers to go into the oven. Now I like to use red peppers because I find they have the most flavor. If you don't have red peppers available, or if you've purchased a multi-pack of peppers, you can also use yellow or orange peppers, and it will also create a nice puree. I would not recommend using green peppers for the puree, as they have instead of a sweet flavor, they have a very different flavor, and I don't think that you'll find it as enjoyable as the pepper puree. Yes, we have a question.
Can we add other vegetables into our red pepper sauce?
That is a great question. You certainly could. I would probably cook the peppers separately, but then if you wanted to also add some other cooked vegetables, that would also work. I know that there's a type of pizza that I have had that actually uses a carrot puree. So if you wanted to cook up some carrots and puree carrots, you could even add some garlic into the pureed carrots. That would also make a lovely topping. You could also add cooked cauliflower, cooked broccoli. You know, really, sky's the limit, but absolutely, that's a great question. You could add other vegetables into the sauce. Okay, the first thing we want to do with any vegetable is we need to wash it and need to make sure that they're nice and clean. So if you could wash your red peppers, that would be great. I'm going to keep talking while Kiana is doing the prep. Hopefully you can listen and follow along, but as I said, if you find it too much, just please put a note in the chat to slow down or to pause. So why red peppers? I've mentioned that they're lower in potassium, and if you compare a jar or a little can of traditional pizza sauce, and I'll show you the label in a second, that can have up to 300 milligrams of potassium in just a quarter cup of sauce. And a quarter cup of sauce is not very big. With the red peppers, an entire cup of red pepper puree only has 94 milligrams of potassium. So it is much lower. I'm going to show the can of pizza sauce, and I've highlighted. When we're checking for sodium in products, and I have discussed this with many of you, what we want to be looking for is we want to look at the number of calories in the serving and the number of milligrams of sodium. And you want the amount of sodium to be the same or less than the calories. So in this example, there are 30 calories in a serving, but there are 250 milligrams of sodium. So this would be a high sodium item. You can also see that there are 300 milligrams of potassium in a 1/4 cup serving of this sauce. So this would not be a really kidney-friendly sauce for your pizza. Making the red pepper puree is a much better kidney-friendly option. So that is why we are going through the process of making this puree. Okay, once your peppers are nice and clean, we're going to core them and chop them up into large chunks. I wanted to just show you some knife skills. If your kids are wanting to help at home, I definitely would encourage you to have them help out in the kitchen and not to be afraid to have them starting to use knives. A lot of people think if kids are going to be using knives in the kitchen, they should use a knife that is very dull. That actually is not true. You have a higher chance of cutting yourself when using a dull knife than if you use a sharp knife. When a child is cutting with a sharp knife, to cut safely, you want them to tuck their thumb, wrap their fingers around their thumb, and use their knuckles to hold the item that they're cutting. So if they're holding it with their knuckles, their fingers are tucked out of the way, and it significantly reduces the chances that they will nip or cut their fingers. With their fingers tucked and holding, they can then safely use the sharp knife to cut the vegetable or other food that they're cutting. Okay, when we cut our peppers, make sure you don't throw away the top part. Just remove the stem, and you can definitely use this top part. Inside are the seeds, so we're going to want to scoop out the seeds. We're just going to get a green bin so we can put our vegetable scraps in there. Knock all the seeds out. And then we're going to cut our peppers into quarters about this big for making our sauce. Okay. As we're cutting up our peppers, does anybody have any other questions? Is everybody able to see us okay, follow along okay? Good. Awesome. So our peppers are going to take approximately 45 minutes to roast in the oven. We do it at quite a high temperature, and we do want our peppers to become a bit charred or a bit blackened. That's a sign that they are well roasted, and they will be nice and easy to then peel and puree.
Meredith, can I do this with raw peppers instead of roasting them?
So to do it with raw peppers, no, it won't work. You do need to roast them. You need to break down the hard cellular structure of the vegetable so that it becomes very soft and pulpy and becomes easy to puree. What you could do if you didn't want to take the time to do them yourself and roast them is you could buy a jar or a can of roasted red pepper pieces. They do sell them. You would want them packed in oil or packed in water, and you would want to check to make sure that there's no added salt or sodium into that package of the roasted red pepper. You could then puree those pre-roasted peppers, and that would be a quick time-saving option if you didn't have time to roast them yourself.
Question.
Yeah, there's a question.
If a product doesn't have potassium on the label, how can we find out how much is in it?
So that's a really great question, and you are absolutely right. Many products do not list potassium on the label. So I would say if there is a particular food that you're interested in, one of the things you can do that's a quick kind of check is you can look at the ingredient list, but that's only going to show added potassium. It's not going to show naturally occurring potassium. But if you did look at the ingredient list and you saw any ingredients that had potassium as a component, so it could be potassium chloride, potassium sulfate, there's many potassium additives, that would mean there's added potassium. In order to find out how high the product is in naturally occurring, that's more challenging. So I would say if you had something that your child likes to eat a lot of often, and you've been told that blood work has indicated that your child's potassium is a little on the higher side, I would reach out and ask your dietitian, myself, Nani, or Kirsten, and see we can find that information for you and we can let you know. But it is a frustration and it is difficult to navigate. It would be nice if it was mandatory to have that information on labels, but unfortunately it is not. Excellent. Now that we have our peppers chopped and ready to go, we are going to toss them with some olive oil. You can also use canola oil if you don't have olive oil. And we're just going to lightly coat them in the oil.
How much oil should I use, Meredith?
So I would, if you want to measure it, a couple tablespoons. So 1 tablespoon is equal to 15 mils, and that's also 3 teaspoons. So you could use a tablespoon. If you're using measuring cups, you could use a 1/4 cup. You just want the peppers to be lightly coated in the olive oil. Once our peppers have been coated in the oil, we're going to put them on a baking sheet to go into the oven. I would recommend that you line your baking sheet. You can either use parchment paper or tin foil. This just helps to make the cleanup easier. If you don't have tin foil or parchment paper, it is perfectly okay to put the peppers directly onto the cooking sheet, but you will find that it is less mess and easier to clean up if you line the cooking sheet with some tin foil or parchment paper. We'll just give you a second to get your tray ready. And once you have your tray lined, you're going to want to put the chunks of red pepper onto the tray, spread them out so they're in a single file, not on top of each other. And once our oven is preheated and ready to go, we are going to put them in the oven for about 45 minutes. Okay, our oven still has a ways to go, so we will just set these aside. And we will get started on making our pizza dough. I love making homemade dough. bread is very high in sodium. It's something that you really can't get away from. If you've ever made... Yeah?
Sorry, does it matter if you put them skin down, or like which way did the roasted peppers need to sit?
No, it doesn't matter. You can put them anyway onto the tray. We're actually going to check them about halfway through and we'll flip them over. So however they start, we'll be flipping them to the other side. Good question. Thank you. So if you've ever made homemade bread, you know that it will go moldy pretty quickly. Kind of 2 to 3 days sitting on your counter, and you're probably going to have some mold growing on it. If you buy bread from the grocery store, it can last an astonishingly long amount of time. Sometimes it can be there for several weeks and it won't start to grow mold. The reason is the amount of sodium that is put into bread as a preservative. So by making your own, you can significantly reduce the amount of sodium. When we look at bread and bread products and try to use the quick trick to check on sodium content, you will find that it will be very, very difficult, next to impossible, to find a type of bread that has less milligrams of sodium per serving than calories. And what I normally tell people is choose the type of bread that your child likes to eat, be it white, whole wheat, multigrain. Take a look at a variety of different brands and choose the one that has the least amount of sodium. But you will not be able to find one that has less than the calories. So with this pizza dough recipe that I'm going to show you, it's very versatile. You can use this to make breadsticks. You can use this to make pizza dough. We're going to make cinnamon buns at the end. You can also make pizza popovers. You can make rolls. Pretty much, sky's the limit. Anything that you would want to make out of the bread product, you can use this recipe. And we will be adding no salt, so it's 0 milligrams of sodium. Okay. When we make the pizza dough, the first thing we want to do is we want to run our tap on the hot water at the highest setting until the water gets pretty much as hot as it gets coming out of the tap. You need the water to be really warm to activate the yeast. When the water coming out of your tap is really hot, you're going to measure 1 cup of hot water in the measuring cup. Okay. Into our cup of hot water, we're going to add a 1/4 cup of oil. Again, it can be canola or it can be olive. And we add that directly into the water. In our mixing bowl, we're going to add 3 cups of flour. Now this can really be, it can be all-purpose flour. If you prefer whole wheat, you can use whole wheat flour. It's up to you what your preference is, but we're going to add 3 cups of flour.
And before we do that, we just checked in the chat and we saw that everyone's ovens are ready. So we're gonna throw that in and get it roasting. We have another oven and that one is a little bit faster. So you can take your peppers and go ahead and put them in the oven. If you're doing this with a kid, just make sure that they have their oven mitts on, and it can be a really great skill to teach them to slide something in the oven with 2 hands. So that they're not afraid of putting things in and burning themselves. So a great tip is when they're opening the oven door to turn their face away from the oven and count to 3 out loud so that the hot air doesn't hit their face. and then you can help them put it in.
Great. I'd also encourage you to set your timer. The instructions say to check the peppers about every 10 minutes. We'll probably check them in about 15 minutes. So if you want to set your timer for 15 minutes, we will then check our peppers and flip them over. I'm going to set it on your watch?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Great. So hopefully everybody has their peppers in the oven. Set your timer. We'll remind you with the timer too. We've got ours going here. So we want to add 3 cups of flour into our mixing bowl.
What type of flour should I use?
It's totally up to you. I like to use an all-purpose flour. You wouldn't want to use a pastry or a cake flour for making pizza dough. All-purpose works well. It can be white, it can be whole wheat. Really the choice is yours. The whole wheat might potentially need a slight adjustment to the other components. It might need a little bit more water, and it might need a little longer baking time, but either of those are perfectly fine. Okay, into our flour, we're going to add 1 package of yeast. I have pizza yeast, use it from here, and it can be pizza yeast. It can also be quick acting yeast. It doesn't have to be pizza yeast. You just do want the quick, rapid rise yeast is best. And if you're using yeast that comes in a jar, 2 1/4 teaspoons is the amount that is contained in one of the packets. So you can either use 1 packet or 2 1/4 teaspoons of the yeast in the jar. Yes, right there. So either 1 packet or 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast into the flour. Now, when you're making a bread product and you're using yeast, you need to feed the yeast. So we do need to add a teaspoon of sugar, or if you want, you can also use honey instead. So you could use a teaspoon of sugar or a teaspoon of honey. So you can add the sugar into the mixture and then just stir it all around. This is just white sugar in this container.
Can I use other types of sugars?
Such as, like, are you thinking
Brown sugar, molasses?
Yeah, you could use a brown sugar. I think molasses, because of its strong flavor, it might alter or change the taste of your product. You wouldn't want to use a sugar substitute or something like stevia or agave or any of those types, because you actually do need the carbohydrate component of the sugar to feed the yeast. So you do need to make sure that there is something there to feed the yeast. So either like a honey or a white sugar or a brown sugar would be the preferred type of sugar to use. Okay, once you've mixed that all together, we're going to add our hot water with oil. And I like to just use a kitchen fork to mix this together. So just pour your hot water and oil in and use your kitchen fork to mix all of the ingredients together. The goal is that we're going to get a bit of a shaggy type dough. If you find after mixing it around that you're just not having it all come together, you may need to add a very small amount of additional water. I would only add this in very small teaspoon amounts. You don't want to over add the water. We are going to be kneading this on the surface. So if you think that it's almost coming together, I would wait until you dump it out onto the counter and start kneading, because it will get sticky as we start to knead it, and you don't want there to be too much water. Okay, so once you've mixed it up into what's called a shaggy dough, we are going to take our clean countertop. You can also use a cutting board if you want to do this on a cutting board. If you want to put down a piece of wax paper or parchment paper, you can knead it on top of that. We're going to knead it directly on our surface, and you want to sprinkle out a small amount of flour onto the surface, onto your hands as well, and then dump or scoop that shaggy dough right out of the bowl. This is a really fun thing for kids to do. Kids love making dough. It's a chance for them to really be tactile, hands-on. They can really, get into it. When you're kneading dough, you pull it towards you and push away with the heel of your hand. And you can do that a couple times and then give it a quarter turn. And then pull it towards you and push away with the heel of your hand and give it a quarter turn. And we're going to knead the dough for about 5 to 6 minutes. We'll just keep watch on the clock over here. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the dough elastic. We're forming bonds in the dough that's going to help it rise. We're stretching all the gluten that's in the dough. And we really want to get it nice and smooth and elastic. If you find that the dough starts sticking to your surface or to your hands, you can lightly sprinkle a little more flour. Yes, we have another question.
Meredith, can you prepare this dough in advance?
Absolutely, that's a great question. You can prepare the dough. This particular recipe makes 2 loaves of dough. So if you only want to use one, you can save the other. You just want to wrap it tightly in saran wrap. And what I do is I wrap it in saran wrap and then I put it in a plastic Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. When you're ready to use the dough, just simply take it out of your freezer, take it out of the Ziploc bag and let it thaw on your counter. It will start to expand as it thaws, but that's a great question. You definitely can make it ahead of time, freeze it, and have it ready to go.
Could I then double the recipe?
Absolutely. When I make pizzas in my house, I have to make 4 or 5 pizzas for my family. So I often double or triple the recipe to get enough dough. So you absolutely can do that. And that's a really great point that you bring up. When we're all busy and we're trying to work and go to school and manage activities, it can be really, really difficult to cook on a regular basis or to have things made. So making things ahead of time and freezing them when you have time to do that is a great idea. And then you can just plan ahead and pull things out the night before, pull things out in the morning and have them thawing in the fridge, and then they're ready to go when you get home at the end of the day. So I'm a big fan of batch cooking and preparing things and freezing them and having lots of things on hand that are ready to go. So hopefully your dough is getting nice and soft and smooth. Hopefully it's not too sticky. And we've just got a couple more minutes of kneading to go.
What do I do if my dough is super sticky?
If it's super sticky, you can try sprinkling just a small light dusting of flour over the dough or on your surface, and that will just help to incorporate a little bit more flour and make your dough less sticky. The dough is actually going to resemble kind of Play-Doh. Super fun. Yeah?
Is it safe for me to eat the dough at this stage?
No, I would not eat raw dough. I don't recommend eating anything that has uncooked flour in it raw. It is important that you do cook the flour. So no, I would discourage kids from eating raw dough. I also don't imagine that it tastes very good, but it tastes much better when it's cooked.
When I'm mixing the dough, can the water be too hot or too cold?
So the water really needs to be kind of as hot as it comes out of your tap. You don't want to boil water and use boiling water. If water's too hot, it will actually destroy and kill the yeast. And if the water is too cold, it won't activate the yeast. So there is a sweet spot. It's not as delicate that you need to use a thermometer to check the temperature, but I would say if you've run your tap and it gets to the hottest temperature that comes out of your tap, that's the perfect temperature to use. And if your dough absolutely does not rise at all, that is an indication that either your yeast is too old and it's no longer viable or active, or that you've used water that's too hot and it's killed your yeast. But fingers crossed, everyone's dough is going to work out today. Okay, so I think we've been kneading it for about 5 to 6 minutes. What you want to do now is you want to take your bowl, and we're just going to put a small amount of oil, so you can just pour. You don't have to measure it, just a small amount, and move your bowl around to coat the entire bowl. You can also use your hand, and then you can take your dough and roll your dough around to completely coat it in the oil. And we're just going to leave the dough in the bottom of the bowl. I like to cover it with a piece of saran wrap. If you don't have cling wrap, that is fine, but I do like to cover the bowl with a piece of saran wrap. And then using a clean kitchen towel, I like to wrap the bowl up. And this is to keep the dough warm. If you have an oven where there are burners over top of the oven, you can also, as long as your elements and your burners are not on, you can set the bowl on top of the oven and the heat will help to rise the dough. Yes, there's a question.
So there's a question in the chat. Would you ever recommend using a bread maker?
You absolutely could. If you have a KitchenAid mixer and a stand mixer, you can make your dough with the dough hook in the stand mixer. If you have a bread maker, I personally have not used a bread maker to make dough. I've only used a bread maker to actually cook bread, so I'm not entirely sure how that would work, but if you do have a function on your bread maker to knead dough, you certainly could knead it in there. But the KitchenAid stand mixer definitely does have a dough hook that you could use to knead your dough. That's a great question. So I'm going to show you some examples of dough that is available in the grocery store, just to again highlight why we're going through the effort of making our own dough. So I found this product really interesting. When you look at this product, the name is Only Goodness. It's a cauliflower pizza crust mix. And it conveys the message of health or healthy. But when we flip it over and we look at the ingredients, you can see that when we look at the amount of sodium, there is more sodium than calories. I just have to look at it because I can't remember what it was. So there are 160 milligrams of sodium and 140 calories. But if we look right below the sodium, there's 500 milligrams of potassium. So again, this comes back to the question, had the manufacturer not listed potassium, you would have no idea. But 500 milligrams is quite a significant amount. One banana has 300 milligrams of potassium. One glass of regular milk has about 300 milligrams of potassium. So this would be considered a high potassium item. And this is based on a third of the mix. So probably you're going to need to use a lot more than a third of the mix to make a pizza dough. We just use 3 cups of flour to make our pizza dough. If you also look at the ingredient list, there is added phosphorus on the ingredient list. So despite the fact that the packaging makes this look like a healthier option, from a kidney perspective, this would not be an option that I would recommend. Okay, it's time to flip our peppers. So if everybody can take an oven mitt and take a fork or tongs or whatever you like to use to flip your peppers. We are going to pull our peppers out and give them a flip. You can see that they're starting to get black and they're starting to get a little bit charred. And hopefully with the oil, you'll find they won't stick to the tin foil.
My peppers don't look like that. They're a bit less cooked. Is that okay?
That is okay. They've only been in for about 15 minutes. We are going to leave them in for about 40-45 minutes. So every oven is a little bit different. I would just make sure that your oven is up to 475 degrees and they will have lots of time to keep cooking. So it may just take them a little bit longer.
Could I maybe steam the peppers?
Part of the flavor I find does come from the charring. So yes, you could steam them. That definitely would cook the peppers and allow you to peel them and puree them. But I don't think that you would get the depth of flavor that you get with roasting them. You could also barbecue them if you had a barbecue. You could put them onto the barbecue and char them, and that definitely would work as well. Another tip that you can do, you can try broiling them as well if you turn your oven onto the broil function. The only trick with broiling is you do need to keep a very close eye on what you're broiling because it very quickly can burn. So it very quickly can go from cooking to burning. So you do have to watch stuff that you broil. Okay. The next item that I brought to show you are the pre-made pizza shells. These are made in the bakery at the grocery store. And if you look at the ingredient nutrition label, you can see that there are over 300 milligrams of sodium and only 200 and some calories. So again, the amount of sodium in the prepared pizza shells is greater than the calories, and so that would be considered a higher sodium item. I also brought some frozen pizza balls, and again, if you look at the nutrition label, 290 milligrams of sodium and only 170 calories. There's also 75 milligrams of potassium showing on this label for this pizza dough. And that potassium is coming from food additives. So there would be no naturally occurring potassium that would be in any of the components of the dough, but it would be a food additive to try and keep the product fresh. I brought pizza pops, or pizza pockets. So pizza pops and pizza pockets are a very popular snack with kids. They're a very popular after school snack. You can make pizza pockets or pizza pops out of the dough that we're making. In order to make pizza pops, you would just make a small little ball of dough, roll it out into a circle, fill half of that with your toppings, fold it over and crimp it around the edge. You could pre-bake these and then you could freeze them, and they could be available in the freezer for your child to take out and reheat in the microwave or reheat in the oven for a snack. And I just would like to show the label on this. So keep in mind, this is for all 3 pizza pockets. However, many kids can eat 3 pizza pockets. The amount of calories are 750. The amount of sodium is almost 1,400 milligrams. So that's very high. And the amount of potassium is 650 milligrams. So this definitely is not a kidney-friendly item. So if you can make your own, that would be a great alternative to the pizza pockets. Excellent. So our pizza dough is going to take about 10 to maybe 20 minutes until we're ready to roll it out. So while we're waiting for the dough to rise, we can start with prepping our toppings for our pizza, as well as preparing our salad and making our homemade salad dressing. When it comes to toppings for your pizza, I really would encourage you to engage your child. Ask your child to pick their favorite toppings, be creative with the vegetables that you can use. I will caution against using processed meats. So a lot of kids love pepperoni pizza, a lot of kids love ham. We do know that processed meat products are very high in preservatives. They have a lot of sodium and they have a lot of phosphorus. I'm not going to say you can't use them, but I would not make them the focus of the toppings on the pizza. If you are going to use pepperoni or ham, I would use very small amounts. I would chop them up into very small pieces so that you can sprinkle it around the pizza. And if possible, I would focus on veggie pizza and using more vegetables as toppings than processed meats. Yeah, there's a question.
So there's a question in the chat. Do store-bought products always list all the additives, like phosphates, on the ingredient lists?
Technically, they should. However, what is listed on the ingredients list is listed in quantity. So when you're reading an ingredient list, the ingredients are listed based on how much is present in that product. So when we're looking, for example, at the list on the cauliflower is the first ingredient. That's encouraging, that's good. It's followed by rice flour, brown rice flour, potato flour, soybean sugar, and then where the phosphorus comes in is as a leavening agent. So as your ingredients move along, they're present in smaller and smaller quantities. And there is a threshold there's a point where they do not have to list items that are present in smaller amounts. And we do know that sodium, phosphorus, and potassium are present in virtually all processed and prepared frozen food items. They are used in food manufacturing. They help to enhance flavor. They help to make products juicier. They help them to stay good, fresh longer. They really are used ubiquitously throughout the food processing industry, so you are going to see them in pretty much all processed and prepared items. So checking the list is a good place to start. If phosphorus or potassium is on the list, that's an indicator that the amount that's present in that item is high enough that you have to think about if it's something your child absolutely loves and really, really wants to have. If that's the case, could they have smaller amounts of that item less often? Or can you find an alternative that they'll like as much that does not have those items listed on the label? That helps. Okay, so as I said, picking the toppings and picking what's going to go into your salad is a great place to engage your child. It's a place that they can have some input and some say, especially if you're making make your own pizza night. They're in charge of their own pizza and they can determine or choose what's going to go on that. Do you want to bring the vegetables out?
Yeah.
For today, we've brought a variety of things. We've got mushrooms, we've got green peppers. For the pizza, we've got red onion, we've got white onion. And for our salad, we've got carrots, celery, cucumber, more onion, green peppers, and also some mushrooms for the salad. So really it's sky's the limit. It's your choice and your child's choice as to what vegetables they would like to have. And sometimes they don't want any at all. And if they just want red pepper puree and a little sprinkling of cheese, that's fine too. So again, before we cut any of our vegetables, we always want to make sure that we give them a wash and remove any of the produce stickers. While Kiana is washing the vegetables, and while you're all busy washing your vegetables, when it comes to vegetables, anything that can be peeled, it is a good idea to peel it. So the carrots, for example, it would be a great idea. You can wash them, but then it would be a great idea to peel them. And this just helps in case there's any contaminants and helps to prevent any contamination. I've also chosen, for simplicity's sake, to use packaged lettuce. You can just buy bunches of lettuce in the grocery store. If you buy the bunches of lettuce, you will want to wash it very thoroughly, and you can use a salad spinner, or you can put it between two dishcloths, like dish towels, to dry it. And it is really, really important that your lettuce does get washed really well. With the packaged lettuce, they have been thoroughly washed, but I do often wash it again myself, just to be on the safe side, to make sure that there is no contamination and everything is nice and clean. And with mushrooms, you can wash them. Some people peel their mushrooms. I'm not going to say that you need to go to that extent, but if your child is on any immunosuppressants and you're having to be really careful about any possible contamination, then you may want to take that extra step and peel mushrooms. It is actually quite easy to do. With your mushroom, you just pull the skin by the stem and pull back, and the outer peel just comes off very easily. It is a bit time consuming, so we're not going to peel our mushrooms today, but it is an option.
Meredith, do I need to wash my onions if they come in a peel?
No, you don't need to wash your onions. You are going to cut both ends off your onion, and you're going to take that first layer of onion off. So no, you don't need to wash your onions.
When I'm washing my vegetables, what exactly am I washing off?
So there can be contaminants on your vegetables from a variety of different places. There can be contaminants that get onto the vegetables in the field, either from different types of fertilizers that are used or different types of manure. People are picking produce, and people don't always have clean hands. So if someone has, for example, touched their nose or their face, or they've unfortunately, they've gone to the bathroom and they haven't used good hygiene, there can be some cross-contamination that way. Also, as the food is being packaged and transported, fruits and vegetables are often transported with all kinds of other food products. It could have been transported with meat, and there could have been some, meat juice that drips down on the produce. In the grocery store, there can be all different types of points of contamination from, again, being touched with unclean hands. People can sneeze, people can cough on produce in the grocery store. So you do just want to make sure that you're washing all of that away and there's no residue. And, hopefully by doing that, you'll avoid any contamination. A quick word about cutting boards. We're not using any meat products today, but I do encourage you in your kitchen to have separate cutting boards for cutting meat products versus cutting vegetables. And it's a good idea to take a Sharpie and just to label your cutting board so that you only ever use the meat cutting board for meat and the vegetable cutting board for vegetables. That definitely prevents any cross-contamination with meat products. And obviously you're going to wash your cutting board after you cut meat, but there still can be some residue that's left behind, and by using separate cutting boards, you reduce that potential for contamination. So when it comes to vegetables for both the pizza and the salad, it is absolutely, up to you how you like to cut them, how your family likes them. Some people like them in strips, some people like them chopped up into fine pieces. With peppers, sometimes you can even cut circles off, or you can make smiley faces. You can do all kinds of creative things with vegetables and make it fun. So again, this is the opportunity for your kids to really make it fun, have some choice, and have some freedom about what they're going to put on their own individual pizza or salad. I'm also a big fan, as you'll see in some of the later sessions, of family style meals. So wherever possible, bringing things to the table in bowls where you can then assemble your own. So for example, when you're making a salad, if you know that your child has some, pretty strong dislikes, or they don't like everything that the rest of the family makes, bringing the ingredients to the table in separate bowls. So one bowl that's just the lettuce, little bowls that have the different vegetables in it, and then kind of have it like a bit of an assembly line or a buffet where the children can assemble their own and get creative and pick what they want and make their own salad, instead of serving the child the mixed salad and have them getting upset because, oh my goodness, there's a piece of carrot, and oh, I can't possibly have carrot, and maybe that just ruins their whole meal and experience. If you have little bowls and they can choose what they want, and you may find in doing that your children may even become a bit more adventurous, and they may be more tempted to try something if they know that they can just take a really small amount and they can try it. And if they don't like it, they're not committed to having all of that on their plate.
So our roasted red peppers have now been in the oven for half an hour. So we're gonna check on them and see if they need another 15 minutes or if they're ready.
Okay. So get everyone to check on their peppers. I'm going to continue chopping some green pepper here. Wow, so ours are starting to look nice and charred. I don't know if you want to show them, Kiana, what ours look like. So they're getting there. I think maybe we'll flip them and we'll leave them in for 10 more minutes. If anybody's peppers are not starting to look black, maybe let Alicia know in the chat, and we may need to get you to turn your broiler on to start getting them a little bit charred. Okay, so again, we're just going to flip them over, and we'll just put them in for about 10 more minutes.
What should I do if my peppers are already done?
If your peppers are done, I would put them onto the side to cool, because we do need to let them cool down before we can peel them. But I would not turn your oven off. We need the oven to make the cinnamon buns. So once your peppers are done, please turn your oven down to 400 degrees. Or sorry, 425. Please turn your oven down to 425, but don't turn it off.
Just covering them in a bowl.
Yeah, if your peppers are done, what you can do is you can put them into a bowl and cover them over with plastic wrap. And what we want is we need the peppers to sweat so that it's going to separate that tough skin from the pulpy part of the pepper. So if your peppers are already done, please put them in a bowl and cover them over with some saran wrap so that the peppers can sweat, and it will make it easier to remove the peel. There's another trick for removing the peel from peppers that we'll show you, and that is using a brown paper bag, but putting them in a bowl with saran also works just as well. So if your peppers are done, please do that. And when ours are done, we'll show you the other method. Okay. So I'm just going to keep talking as we're going through here. Please keep chopping your vegetables, get your toppings ready for your salad, get your toppings ready for your pizza. And I'm going to talk now about salad dressing. So salad dressings are very high in sodium. There really is no way around that. And you can very easily make your own salad dressing. You also can get very creative with this. Today we're going to make an herb type dressing. I make a really basic salad dressing at home all the time, and all I put is red wine vinegar, olive oil, garlic powder, honey, and a little bit of Dijon mustard, and that's it. And it's an amazing dressing and no sodium. Today we're doing a similar dressing, but we're adding some oregano and some parsley and garlic powder to make more of an herb. So depending on what your family likes and how they like their dressing, you can go crazy. You can really add whatever you want. If you like different types of seasonings, add those in. You can use honey as a source of sweetener. You can use sugar. Sky's the limit. So why make our own dressing? As I said, bought dressings have a lot of sodium. So here is just a extra virgin olive oil, pesto parmesan Italian dressing. And as you can see from the label, there are 35 calories in a 1 tablespoon serving and 120 milligrams of sodium. So again, when we're trying to use the principle of having less sodium than calories per serving, this is like 4 times the amount of sodium than calories. And you will see that when you make your own, it's just as tasty. You do not need the added salt for flavor. Yeah, there's a question.
Can I use those store-bought salad kits?
Yeah, so you can use the kits. However, the problem is going to be with the dressing. So the vegetables that come in the kits, the lettuce that comes in the kits, those are all fine. Where the sodium and the added phosphorus is going to be in things like the seasoned croutons. It's going to be in the dressing. So I would just be aware that while they're convenient, they will contain more sodium.
Right, after this, do you want to shape our pizza dough?
Sure, we need to grate the cheese too. Yeah. We need to check the peppers too. Maybe we'll do the peppers. I'll talk a little bit about cheese.
I have it right here.
So everybody loves cheese. Cheese, again, is high in sodium. However, cheese is a great source of calcium. It's a very dense source of calcium. In a 1.5 thumb size portion of cheese, there is approximately 300 milligrams of calcium. So it is okay for your child to have, small amounts of cheese at snacks. When we talk about cheese for our pizza, I do encourage you to use a hard cheese, like a hard Parmesan, or in this case, I'm using a Grana Padano, and something that's aged and something that's a little bit sticky. The reason for using the hard cheese, and I do encourage you to buy it not grated, is that you can use a very small amount, and when you grate it, you're going to get quite a bit from a small little hard piece. And if you lightly sprinkle it over the pizza, because it has such a strong flavor, you're going to get more taste from using less. So I would just cut off, a small amount. That's going to be your cheese for the entire pizza. And when we grate that, it will create a nice amount of grated cheese. Why not buy the pre-grated Parmesan or the pre-grated other hard cheeses? They often use a phosphorus additive to act as an anti-caking agent. So a lot of the pre-grated cheese products will have some sort of an additive added so that it doesn't clump together. Yeah, there's a question.
What can I do if I don't have a cheese grater?
So if you don't have a cheese grater, there's several things you can do. You can use a knife and you can just fleck off pieces on the cheese block with a knife and cutting it into really small portions. You can also buy or have, some people have these things called grate plates. And grate plates are flat ceramic plates that have ridges on them. And you can just move your cheese over top of it and it breaks it down. If you have a food processor, they will have options on your food processor that you can grate cheese. I also have this nifty little gadget that I got from Tupperware several years ago, and it has a variety of different blades that you can insert, and you just pull it like a lawnmower and it makes the blade go, and you could use something like that to chop up cheese. Any other ideas, guys?
You can just use your hands.
You can use
like
your hands.
I'm doing right now.
There you go. You can crumble it with your hands. So there are lots of options that you can use.
Peppers.
I think we need to get our peppers out of the oven. So everybody, check your peppers. Okay, I think ours are done. I hope everybody else's are done. So as I mentioned, don't turn your oven off, but please turn it down to 425 degrees. So, I will need you to turn the oven down because I can't use that oven. It's not my normal kitchen. I don't know how to use that oven easily. So again, you can put your peppers into a bowl and cover it with saran wrap. The other method, maybe I'll put these ones in the brown paper bag.
Yeah.
The other method I was going to show you is the brown paper bag method. So first I will. And with the brown paper bag method, you want to put your peppers into the brown paper bag while they're still hot. And then once you've got your peppers in the bag, just roll up the bag, and this is fun for kids to do too. You're going to shake it. So you just want to shake your peppers in the bag, and this is creating steam from the hot peppers, and the motion of shaking it in the bag is going to separate the skin from the pulp.
Why do I have to remove the skin?
If you try to puree the peppers with the skin still on, the skin will not puree. It'll stay like a quite filmy skin, and you won't get the smooth puree. So you do have to peel the skin off the peppers. If you don't mind the chunky skin, I mean, by all means you can leave it, but I find it works a lot better if you peel them. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we are going to peel our peppers. They might still be a little hot. Hopefully they are okay. So you can see on this pepper, now that I've shaken it, it's loosened the skin, and you should be able to peel the skin right off. See, there's my skin. Peel it right off the pulp of the pepper. So we will give everyone a few minutes to peel their skin. See this one? How easily that came off. Beautiful. There's my skin, and here's my pulp. So I'm going to put my pulp in the bowl, and I'm just going to discard the skins.
Is it okay, Meredith, if I can't get all of the skin off?
Absolutely. I would say do your best. Get as much of the skin as you easily can. If there's a few little pieces left behind, that's okay. If anyone has issues or trouble doing this, just please shout out and let us know.
Has anyone in the chat made roasted red peppers before? Or is this a first time?
And like I said, we're kind of trying to move along quickly today. Ideally, you would let them cool down a bit more before you try to take the peel off. And this might be something, again, that your kids really enjoy doing. I think kids really love getting their hands dirty in the kitchen. And it's really great for them to explore food and to see the different sensory properties of food. And, just to have a better understanding of where food comes from and what goes into making different types of food items.
So this is someone in the chat's first time, and it's working well for them.
Oh, awesome. Excellent. Great.
See, this piece is coming off really well.
Meredith, if I don't have time to make pizza at home, but I'm going to order a pizza, are there any modifications I can ask the restaurant to make?
That's a great question. So probably the best modification is to get thin crust. So if you get the thin crust pizza, that's less dough. I would ask for light sauce and light cheese. And I would focus on the vegetables and avoid a lot of the processed meats. And when you focus on the vegetables, also focus on fresh vegetables. Try to avoid vegetables that are pickled or, I'm trying to think like banana peppers would be higher in sodium. But focus on things like, green pepper, canned artichokes would probably be quite high in sodium. Feta cheese is very high in sodium. So I would, again, do thin crust, light sauce, light cheese, heavy on the veggies. Does that help? Now you can see, once you've peeled it, why we want to take the peel off. I mean, you can see how hard and filmy these peels are, and they wouldn't puree up very well. Wash our hands. So once you have your peppers pureed, there are so many different, or once you have them peeled, there's so many different ways that you can puree them. If you have a food processor, that's a great option. If you have a blender, that's an excellent option. You can use, like something like my little food chopper. That's a great option. You can even just use a fork and mash them with a fork. Something that I find easy and like to do is you can use a potato masher or a pastry blender. And I'm just going to use my pastry blender and just start mashing them down. So the goal here is to try and break them down and get them as smooth as possible. If you have a blender or a food processor, then you're going to be able to get them into a nice smooth puree. If you're using a potato masher or a pastry blender, they're going to be a little bit more chunky, but that's okay. They're still going to go great on the pizza and offer a ton of nice flavor and be a really great base for your pizza.
And Meredith, just we have less than 40 minutes left.
Okay. So hopefully everyone is being successful in finding a way to mash up their red peppers.
If I'm doing it in the blender, Meredith, do I need to add a liquid?
They should generate enough liquid on their own. If you find that in the blender your puree is becoming quite thick, you could just add just a small amount of water to thin it out a bit, but they should produce, even me mashing them up here, they're generating quite a bit of liquid. So you can see my peppers are getting nice and mashed up, and those will be great for spreading on top of my pizza. Okay, being mindful of time, we should start to assemble our pizza. So if you want to move to your dough should have at least doubled in size in your bowl. So we'll take the wrap off, and then you can take a knife, and you want to cut your dough in half. You can put it on the counter if you want, and we're going to cut it in half. And half of the dough we're going to use for our pizza, and half we'll use to make our cinnamon buns. So I'm just going to set the second one aside. So to make your dough, sprinkle a small amount of flour out on the counter and form it just into a round ball shape. You're going to need something to roll it out. So if you have a rolling pin, that's great. If you don't, you can use a tall glass. Oops, where am I here? Or you can use an empty bottle, or you can use a water bottle, anything that is going to allow you to roll the dough out. And you want to start rolling it into a circular shape. You can also make square pizza. So if you don't have a round pizza pan, you can roll it into a rectangle and you can bake it on a cookie sheet. There's nothing wrong with a square pizza. I'm just gonna go grab a round pan.
And sometimes it can be helpful to make sure when you're rolling it out that you lift up your dough every once in a while to make sure it's not sticking on the countertop. And if it is sticking, you can take a little bit of flour and dust it again on the surface to help prevent it from sticking. And you can even rub some flour on your rolling surface to make sure that it doesn't stick to your dough.
I hope everybody's dough turned out. And okay, so once your dough is ready, here's our pan. You're gonna lift it up and put it on your pan. And if it doesn't cover the pan, just stretch it out with your fingers so that it covers the whole pan. And if there's pieces of dough hanging over the edge, you can just crimp it to form a crust the whole way around the pan.
Meredith, what are some of your favorite dishes to make at home, and do you have any kidney-friendly swaps?
Oh, that's a great question. So yes, some of the dishes that we're going to be making in our upcoming sessions are ones that I actually love to make at home. So next time, not next week, but in 2 weeks, we're going to be making homemade chicken tenders. And chicken tenders are something that kids love. They absolutely love chicken fingers, chicken nuggets. They actually are pretty easy to make at home. You can make them and freeze them. And they're very versatile because they can be a meal, they can be a snack. You can incorporate them into wraps, and you can make wraps with chicken fingers. Really, you can't go wrong. We're also going to be making an Alfredo pasta, and this is really it's a kidney-friendly sauce, and it's very versatile because you can use it to make macaroni and cheese. You can make the Alfredo pasta. You can add different, proteins into the pasta. You could add some salmon or some chicken. You could also use it as a base if you wanted to make like a white sauce lasagna. So there are really great unlimited options that you can use with the sauce. Other things that I like to make, I personally do not use any salt in my cooking at all. And as I've mentioned to many of you, when it comes to sodium, most of our food just has way too much sodium in it. When we make a change to decrease the amount of sodium in our diet, it does take about 6 to 8 weeks for our palate to realign. And so initially, you will find that foods really taste awful. But after about 6 to 8 weeks, your palate realigns and adjusts, and you get used to the taste of food without sodium. Once that's happened, if you then have a high sodium food item, it's going to really taste awful to you because your palate is no longer used to that high amount of sodium. So my family is used to not having sodium in their food. So I don't add it in cooking. I don't add it when it's being served at the table. And I do make a conscious effort to try to avoid sauces that are really salty. So other things that I like to make, you can't go wrong with sort of a plain, marinated chicken, fish, and we're going to be doing a kidney-friendly marinade in our last session that you can use for beef, chicken, pork, fish, any type of protein item. I love to cook. I cook a lot, and trying to think if anyone has any particular food items that they would like more alternatives to, let me know. But lots of things that you can do to modify and make foods more kidney friendly. So Kiana's just dressing our pizza right now. And again, if your kids are helping or if your kids want to have some fun, this is a great place for them to pitch in and help out and put the toppings on the pizza. So we are putting green pepper, mushrooms, red onion,
and cheese.
And a little bit of cheese. And stinky cheese, because the stinkier it is, the more flavorful it is. I see that we are getting short on time, so we do want to get this pizza in the oven, and we want to make our dressing and have your dinner ready before the session ends. So sprinkle your grated hard cheese over the pizza. And then because our oven's already preheated, we are just gonna pop our pizza in the oven. And it should be ready in usually about 15 minutes. Okay, pop it in. So once you've popped your pizza in the oven, we'll set the timer for 15 minutes. And we will go ahead and make our dressing for our salad. So it helps to have a jar with a lid that you can shake. I brought a mason jar today. It doesn't have to be a mason jar. It can be an old glass jar that you've had some food in that you've rinsed really well. It can be a plastic container, like an old water bottle, whatever you have with a lid will do the trick. So to make our salad dressing today, we are going to use a 1/3 cup of olive oil. And again, if you don't have olive oil, you can use canola oil. You can really use any type of oil. When it comes to the type of oil that you're using in the salad dressing, it really comes down to taste and what your taste preference is. Different oils will have a different taste profile. So if you have a particular type of oil that you really enjoy the taste of, that's perfectly fine to go ahead and use that in the dressing, but you do need some sort of an oil as a base. We're using a 1/3 cup of red wine vinegar. And again, you can experiment with different types of vinegars. You may want to try using a dressing with balsamic vinegar, or you may have some sort of a fancy infused vinegar that you may want to try in your dressing.
Yeah, how can I make this a creamy dressing?
That's an excellent question. And next week, we're actually going to be making a Caesar dressing for our Caesar salad. But to make it creamy, you can add high-fat yogurt, like the high-fat Greek yogurt, and you can mix that into your dressing. You could also make a dressing and you could add a little bit of whipping cream into it to make it a little bit creamier. But next week we will be making a creamy Caesar dressing using Greek yogurt. We need a source of sugar, so I like to use honey, but again, you can use white sugar, you could use brown sugar, you could use, in this case, you could use agave or any other type of sweetener that you like to use. It takes 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. This really adds like a nice zing and a nice profile into the dressing. And then we are going to add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder right here. Of garlic powder, 1.5 of garlic powder, 1 of oregano, 1 of parsley, and some black pepper. But again, this is a place where you can customize your dressing to meet your preferences. If you don't want to add all of the herbs, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to. If you have a particular herb that you love, go ahead and add that into your dressing. So this really is the opportunity to make it yours and to make it meet your preferences in terms of taste.
Do I have to worry about additives in my spices?
Not in your spices. So your spices should just be spices. And a good way to check that is to take a quick look at the ingredients. So for example, I'm looking at my parsley flakes and it's just parsley flakes. And that's all that's in there. If you do look at your ingredient list and there's more than just the item in there, that would mean that it does have additives, but hopefully it doesn't. And I'd like to point out too, when you're using garlic powder and onion powder, make sure that you're buying powder. Don't buy salt. So they also sell garlic salt and onion salt, and it looks very much the same, but it does have added sodium. So you just want the garlic powder. Okay, once you have all your ingredients, you're going to put it in your jar and you need to shake it. So again, this is a great activity for your kids to do. I volunteered in the classroom last year with grade 2 students, and we made homemade dressing and salad, and we had a whole shake it song that we would sing and pass it around. The kids just loved it. So you can get creative, you can make up a little song and get your kids to shake up the dressing. And really you just want to make sure it's well incorporated. If you're going to let the dressing sit for a while, you are going to need to reshake it every time before you pour it. And homemade dressing will last in the fridge for about 5 days. It won't last longer than that. It's not like your store-bought dressing that's full of sodium that you can leave in the fridge for several months. Because there are no preservatives, this will start to go bad after about 5 days. So it is a good idea to have a Sharpie and write on the top or on the jar the date that you made it, so you know when you look at it in the fridge whether it's still good to use or whether it's time to throw it out and make a new thing of dressing. So again, with the salad, you can put whatever you want in your salad. We're going to put some celery and some cucumber. We've already got some cut up mushrooms, green pepper, and red onions from our pizza. So we will add those in as well. Just do 1 carrot. And I'm gonna peel 1 carrot. We'll put 1 carrot in.
Meredith, are there any vegetables we should avoid? You mentioned not using tomatoes in our tomato sauce.
So that's a great question. There are some vegetables that are higher in potassium than others. And, you know, typically when we talk about potassium containing foods, we're referring to a 1/2 cup portion. So as long as you are sticking to a 1/2 cup portion for a moderate to low potassium containing food, that's fine. It's when that portion gets larger that the amount of potassium gets greater. So for example, fresh tomatoes in a small amount are perfectly fine. So if you wanted to add some fresh tomatoes into your salad, that's not a problem. The reason why the tomato sauce is so high in potassium is you can imagine how many tomatoes it takes to cook up and compress into a sauce or a tomato paste or a tomato type product. It takes a lot, and that's why it becomes so concentrated and why the amount of potassium becomes so much higher. The highest potassium vegetables are going to be your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, your tomato products. Those are really going to be the highest. And for our fruits, it's going to be many of the tropical fruits. So it's your mangoes, your kiwis, your bananas, and orange juice. Because again, eating a small fresh orange isn't going to have a lot of potassium, but when you have to take 5 oranges and squish them to make orange juice, you're concentrating how much potassium is then going to be in that juiced product. So we're adding our fresh veggies into our salad. And then you can, you've got your dressing ready to go. And when you want to add it to your salad, just give it a shake. And for kids, I would recommend just having the salad on the table and having the dressing separate. And they can add a little bit. They can take just a dip if they want. I wouldn't put the dressing all over the salad because they may not enjoy that. Okay, how much time do we have left?
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Let's make, we can show you if you want to participate along, you can, or if you're feeling overwhelmed at this point, you can just watch us. But we are going to make the cinnamon buns. So we're just going to clean our surface first. That a good wipe, and we're going to dry it really well. So I love making cinnamon buns. My kids love them too. They're delicious. You can make them using our pizza dough that we made today. You can also make them just using biscuit dough. Really, really easy to make. If you've never made cinnamon buns before, they are super fun. So you're going to take your other half of the dough and sprinkle some flour on your work surface. This time you want to roll the pizza dough out into a rectangle. So you're going to roll it lengthwise. You can make it a little bit wider, but you're going to want to roll it into a rectangular shape. And once you've got your dough rolled out into your rectangle, margarine. You're going to take some margarine or butter, and you can choose the unsalted margarine or butter. This is the Blue Menu margarine from Superstore, and it actually has 60 milligrams of sodium per 2 teaspoons and 70 calories. So it actually meets the requirements for having less sodium than calories. So this margarine is thumbs up. And you want to generously spread a layer of margarine on top of your pizza dough.
We have a question.
Yes.
So instead of cinnamon, can you use any other types of spices?
Absolutely. If you had other types of spices that you enjoy, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, like cardamom might be nice. You could use a little bit of nutmeg. Nutmeg's quite potent, so you wouldn't want to use a ton.
You could even use, it's fall right now, so you could use some pumpkin pie spice.
Ooh, that would be good. Yeah. You do want to generously spread it with the margarine, and then you can use white sugar. I like to use brown sugar or golden sugar. Today I have brown sugar. And you want to sprinkle a layer of sugar over the margarine. And you can smooth it out with your hand. And then once you have your layer of sugar covering your margarine, take your cinnamon or other spice that you're going to use and just give it a nice sprinkle. So again, you've got a layer of margarine, a layer of sugar, a layer of cinnamon, and then starting at the upper edge, you're just going to roll it up like a little roll. So fold it over and start to roll it. And as you roll it, just kind of give it a squeeze to roll it, fairly tightly. It doesn't have to be super tight. And roll it all the way to the end, and then just give it a little squeeze. And then take your knife. You will want to line your baking tray because these can get messy when the sugar, melts over. Take your knife and just cut off little 2-inch kind of pieces and put them onto your baking sheet. And spread them out.
And this is perfect because our pizza is coming out of the oven in about 1 minute, so these will be ready to go in just in time.
Yep. And once you've got them spread out on your cooking sheet, they will go in the oven and bake for about, what did we say, 20 minutes, I think? I gotta check my recipe. I make all kinds of different cinnamon buns, so I gotta check this one. About 10 to 15 minutes. And because I was worried that I would talk too much and I would run out of time, I actually made some at home ahead of time. So this is what the cinnamon buns look like once you've baked them and they come out of the oven. And they smell delicious, they taste delicious, and they're a great dessert or, as I said, a great thing to pack in a lunch or have as a snack.
Can I put icing on the cinnamon buns?
Absolutely. You can make either a buttercream icing or a cream cheese icing. So we're going to use cream cheese next week, or not next week, in 2 weeks when we do our Alfredo sauce. And cream cheese actually is a really great way to increase calories without increasing phosphorus. Cream cheese, although it says it's a cheese, it's really not. It's really considered more of a fat, and it actually is pretty good, and you can incorporate it in a lot of things. So if you wanted to make a cream cheese icing, you could take cream cheese and beat it up with some icing sugar, put a little bit of milk to thin it out, and that would make a lovely cream cheese icing for your cinnamon rolls.
All right, let's get this pizza
Let's
out.
look at our pizza. Look.
Good.
Awesome. Okay, so here's our pizza. A good trick to tell if it is done is you just ever so slightly lift up the side of the crust, and you want it to just be a little bit brown underneath. And as long as your crust looks golden and your cheese is melted, it looks like it's ready to go. Awesome. And we will throw our cinnamon buns in the oven, and again, they're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes at the same temperature. So hopefully tonight you now have your dinner prepared, and you're all going to enjoy a lovely pizza with a salad, with a wonderful homemade dressing, and your cinnamon buns should be ready in about 15 minutes, and you will have a lovely dessert. So I would love to see what everybody's pizza looks like, but that's up to you if you want to share. But yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this first session. I hope that I was able to give you some helpful tips and just sort of increase your knowledge around cooking a kidney-friendly recipe. I hope that you found it easy to follow along with and informative. And I really encourage you to get your kids in the kitchen. Eventually, you know, our kids are going to grow up and they're going to be independent, and they're going to have to manage, you know, their own diet. And the sooner they can start getting in the kitchen, getting familiar with cooking, being aware of what they need to look out for in terms of managing their own kidney disease and what changes they can make, the better. So I hope everybody had a great time. I had a great time.
I had a great time.
Yeah. So,
I had a great time.
Yay! So just so you know what's coming up, in 2 weeks we will be doing the chicken tenders, the pasta Alfredo, and the Caesar salad. 2 weeks after that, we will be doing a Mexican fiesta. It's a big one. So that one, there will be a lot of cooking, but it's really great. And then following that, we will ask you to fill out the food skill questionnaire one final time. And then once the entire project is complete, you will be getting a gift card for a grocery store for thanking you for your participation in this. So again, thank you all so much for attending. Enjoy your kidney-friendly dinner, and I hope your kids love it. Any final questions before we sign off?
We have a few thank yous in the chat.
Okay,
But
awesome.
no questions.
Awesome, great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for spending the afternoon with us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Lovely aprons.